Hello, hello, and welcome in episode number 5 of the Trevor and Sean Sports Podcast. Trevor and Sean Nino joining you every Monday afternoon to bring you what's going on in the sports world. And Sean, what do you think here going on this week? I mean, busy week, national champions, March Madness. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, this is like kind of the end of the year for one part of sports. Baseball will be starting up in 6 days. Basketball's college basketball's coming to an end next weekend, and the NBA is going to go until the end of June. So that's for another day. But we have a lot of stuff going on right now.
Yeah, we're kind of at a crossroads. There's a lot of stuff going on. Some stuff kind of coming to an end. College basketball winding down. Football season obviously well over with. But yeah, it's kind of a glorious time for sports, no matter what sport you're in. I believe the Masters is coming up in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I don't really know the exact.
I think it's April 6th through the 9th, so that'll be exciting. I'll turn that on in the background. I'm not gonna heavily invest a day or so watching it, but I'll see. I'll probably watch the end half of Sunday because you just always have to see who wins.
I always just kind of keep track of it, what's going on, who's in front, who looks like maybe they could make a late surge. And if it looks like it's close to clinching time, I might switch over and see, just because Jim Nantz always has something really clever to say. But yeah, that's coming up in a couple weeks as well. But Sean, big news in Maryville this week. National champions. I know that's something that we're used to here in Maryville, but not in basketball. They got it done.
Yeah, they did. The first time going to the Final Four. First time in the national championship, and this team, as we could tell, seeing them throughout the year, they just had a special, special feeling towards them. They were on a mission from last year because they felt that they were probably the second best team in the league, or probably the nation. Losing to Augustana in the Sweet 16, and there was the tweet that senior Zach Snyder put out right after the season ended that the regional was going to go through Maryville, and they did their job and they got the regional here. They did their job, played the games, and here in Bearcat Arena, and then they went to a place where they're kind of okay to play at because it's only 4 hours away. They've played up there for regionals for for past years, and so I think this team had all the parts to it. They towards the end of the year, they may not have had the best offensive showing, but the defense is what won them the championship.
Yeah, I think all the stars aligned for them to be able to emerge victorious. And like you said, they were able to beat Southwest Minnesota State in a regional here in Maryville a couple weeks ago to go on to the Elite Eight. They took on St. Thomas Aquinas College in the first round last Wednesday. They won that one to advance on to the Final Four. They got Lincoln Memorial, the Rail Splitters, on a Thursday night matchup. They won that one 79-67. And then the final on Saturday, Fairmont State, they beat them 71-61 to claim their first national championship in basketball. It was just a storybook season, Sean.
Yeah, and I think that not starts and ends, but the first name you have to bring up, Justin Pitts. I mean, he's Absolutely. A junior, the best player that Northwest has ever seen at this point. It's hands down. I mean, not just because they brought them the national championship, but that comes with it that he's, going to probably be in the record books for scoring, steals, assists. He's going to lead the team in most things. I mean, he's not going to lead them rebounds just because of the spot he plays in, but next year is going to be pretty interesting. We're just talking about what happened on Saturday. I didn't get a chance to watch it. Did you get any chance to watch it?
I caught the second half of it, and defensively they played really well. They did a decent job of breaking the press and playing well. I mean, it was a pretty solid all-around performance from nothing fancy or sexy like maybe we were accustomed to seeing earlier on in the year, like you said, but I mean, they just defensively they looked pretty sound, just like they did Thursday night when I saw them play Thursday night.
Yeah, and one name that sticks out to me in what he did was Chris Abu-Ndow.
Mm-hmm.
He had 17 points, and that in its own right, very good. But he also had 18 rebounds, which is his career high and the 7th or 8th most in Northwest history in a single game. And you know, I heard a quote this morning that was like, I didn't even know that I, had that many. I just kept, getting the ball, giving it out to my teammates and all that. That just shows like these guys are in it for that game. They kind of take it possession by possession. They're not looking like, okay, what are we going to do in 2 minutes type of thing. No, they're going, what can we do right now to go get these points or to stop them?
You look at this team, I know Schneider's gone for next year, Mosby
and Woods.
So, you return Justin Pitts, you return in Dow. Ryan Welty will see a lot more time coming off the bench. Well, what do you think is the realistic possibility this team could be back? If not repeating, definitely competing to repeat. I think the door's open.
I think Ryan Welty needs to shoot more, and that's been a thing that the coaches have said throughout this entire year, because Zach's, been the guy who, if he has it, he's going to shoot the open shot, and then if not, he's, going to pass it off to someone who could be open. I think Justin Pitts is just going to get better, which is really hard to say, because, how do you get better than
no
being
kidding.
the best player in the country? But, it's going to the Doherty brothers are going to be playing really well, because I think it should be Brett Doherty's senior year, if I'm not mistaken. So next year's team, they still have a core group that's there, but I think they're going to miss Devontae Mosby coming off the bench a lot, because he may not have had the numbers to back up his, what he did on the court, because he would provide energy, execution, and that type of stuff. And whenever he's out there, he was a bit of a spark plug if the team ever was down at all.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see going into next year. Sean, just something I kind of want to quibble on here real quickly. I got thinking about, you mentioned it being baseball season coming up 6 days from now, next Sunday.
Pretty sure they have like opening night on Sunday.
Sunday night. I believe Cubs. Is it Cubs Cardinals? I don't remember what it is. I think it's. Yeah, I don't care. 85 wins for the Royals this year, over or under?
That's hard. I could see it going both ways. Injuries always happen. That's kind of what happened last year, and it got derailed. Not quite from the start, but after April, it was like, okay, we'll have to tread our way around injuries. The starting rotation doesn't wow me, but I think they can get the job done. I think this is probably the second best rotation they've had, other than when they won the World Series.
Yeah.
Oh. The Royals fan in me wants to say over, but the Kansas City fan in me is like, Sean, you know what's going to happen.
I want to say probably right at about 85. Like, somewhere between probably 83 and 88. I don't know that's enough to get in the wild card spot. And maybe we can look into that more next. That's what we do next week, is do our Major League Baseball predictions on top of the National Championship game preview.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see the starting second baseman for the Royals in opening day next Monday at Minnesota will be
Raul Mondesi.
That's who I would.
I'm pretty sure that they've come out and said it on Twitter today that it was.
Did they? I haven't looked on social media
so,
today.
And then Cologne and the name's eluding me. And Merrifield are gonna kind of fight for that bench spot, because Mondesi, what he needs to do is he needs to be able to hit, because he can play defense at pretty much a Gold Glove level.
Mondesi has like a Francisco Lindor level defense, I think, but he can't hit worth a lick now.
Yeah, he didn't have a good spring training, and spring training's the time that you're supposed to be able to, hit guys, because it's it's not their A stuff. So
the upside to that though is he's only 21 years old, so there is an upside to that. So maybe he's got to be one of the younger guys on.
Yeah, he's in the top 3, and I looked at the stat earlier. This is why name's really bad for me, but I think he's the 3rd youngest Royal to ever start. So
yeah, that's impressive. So I guess we'll see. Opening day is next Monday at Minnesota. They have a 2-game stand, I believe, with Minnesota, then a 3-game stand at Houston, and then a 3-game stand at home. The opener will be Monday, April 10th against Oakland, and it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I already got my ticket for the Wednesday night game. I'm super stoked. I haven't been at Kauffman in months, and I can't wait. It's baseball season.
Yeah, that's kind of, I'm excited, Not quite, opening day is going to be fun, but after that, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, let's it's baseball. Let's calm down.
See, I don't know that you can top opening day last year, like ever.
Well,
And
obviously.
and I was fortunate enough to be there last year when they took on the Mets on opening night, Sunday Night Baseball, raising the championship flag and all that stuff. And it was one of the best sports moments of my life. That and a Chiefs playoff game rank 1 and 2, and it depends on the day which one of those is above the other. But yeah, I mean, it was awesome, and I don't know if you can ever beat that atmosphere unless you win another World Series. So this is it. it's probably now or never.
Yeah, it's either that or they're gonna have to move around things. I think they can make this last as Trevor gets the hiccups.
Every Monday.
I think they can make it last, but they're going to have to be really smart with what they do because they can't just mess around like, say, a Boston, New York,
Cleveland.
Cleveland is kind of similar to Kansas City in the way that they have to build up what they have.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I guess I get what you're saying, but I'm one, and maybe you're a little different than I am on this, but if they're 15, 20 games below 500 in July and it's clear that there's no chance of making the playoffs and your negotiations with a guy like Hosmer or Moustakas or Kane have gotten nowhere, I am all in favor of dealing them. If you can get a couple of farm guys for Eric Hosmer, well, I mean, why not? You look at a team like Boston that might need a first baseman, or I can't think of any teams off the top of my head that might need a first baseman, and they have a solid farm system. Build from the bottom up again. That's how the Royals got to where they were with crafty trades and a strong farm system. Without the Wade Davis trade or the Zach Greinke trade, trading him to Milwaukee and getting Kane and Escobar, they're probably not winning a World Series a couple years ago. So you gotta do what serves you, and I think would be what serves them. I hope we're not in that situation. I hope that in July they're at least in the hunt, if not in the lead. But I don't know. I mean, last year was a very interesting year because there were times where they couldn't score any runs. Then there were times they could score a ton of runs, but then the pitching wouldn't back them up. But when the pitching backed them up, they couldn't do anything. I mean, you'd have games where they'd lose 3-2 and the next night win like 11-8.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I think the bullpen's still strong. I liked the Davis move, getting rid of him. Herrera's good. Strahm will be in the bullpen. He kind of shined on towards late in the year last year. Travis Wood is respectful. So I'm excited to see what baseball season brings as it starts here next week.
Yeah, right now the only, again, weak point I truly see with the Royals is the starting five,
Well, and maybe this is a cynical Kansas City fan to me that, we signed Danny Duffy to a big long-term contract, and I think, oh, no, here comes the Tommy John surgery, here comes this, here comes that. Same feeling I have with Eric Berry and the Chiefs re-signing Eric Berry. I told my girlfriend right after they signed him, I said, you know what, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Eric Berry goes out like week 3 and gets hurt and is out for the year just to squash my dreams. So, I don't know, maybe we'll see. I think the rotation isn't bad. I don't think it's great, but Duffy's solid, Kennedy's solid, Hamill's solid if he can stay healthy. Obviously, they're going to miss Ventura a lot. But,
yeah.
I mean, I don't remember what the back end of that looks like. I think Carnes is going to be the 5 guy.
Vargas is the 4.
And Vargas is the 4. So, not awful. It's definitely not the worst rotation. And even in the AL Central, I mean, Minnesota's is pedestrian at best. And, I mean, they're not going to be able to compete with Detroit or Cleveland starting 5 pitching staff. I mean, those are just really, really good. But I'm going to say probably, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what it was. I think you're probably in a race for Detroit for second in the Central. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland has been building up parts for years.
Yeah, and they just signed Edwin Encarnacion this offseason too. A big bat.
Yeah, so, hopefully they lose some guys. I mean, not to like wish injury on people because that's not, it's not good. But like if they could have guys go on the DL for, maybe a few of the games that the Royals have to play because this isn't the same team that we saw win the World Series.
No.
So
and this is building off that. This is basically the same Cleveland team that was maybe a rainstorm away from winning the World Series last year. The only person they lose is the hero in that game, and Rajai Davis. I believe he's in Oakland again now. I don't remember where he signed, or Toronto. I don't remember, but he's not in Cleveland anymore. I know that much. So Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how baseball season, starts off, and that's 6 days away. Sunday Night Baseball opening night. I'm excited. But Sean, big news breaking a little over an hour ago. We talked about this earlier on the morning, thinking it was probably going to happen, but ESPN is reporting that it is for sure happening. The Las Vegas Raiders. How does that sound?
Weird.
It does sound weird. If you're unaware, the NFL, they have their annual owners meeting. I think it actually took place in Vegas, I believe, this year. The owners voted 31-1 in favor of approving the Raiders' relocation to Las Vegas. The only team voting against it, the Miami Dolphins, which raises the question, what in the world do the Dolphins have against it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe a business deal went.
There's always
went
that
wrong.
one guy, and it was the Dolphins, I guess. But yeah, so they're going to be playing in Las Vegas. I believe they're shooting for 2019, probably on the early end. I mean, they got to build a new stadium, but it's going to be weird. You look at the AFC West. Half the AFC West has relocated in the last couple months, with the Chargers moving to Los Angeles, and now the Raiders going to Sin City.
Yeah, and one thing I saw for the Las Vegas move, there is 0% state tax in Nevada, and it's like 14% in California. So the players were like, well, that's a bit of an added bonus.
It might be a free agency plot too. I mean,
well, yeah, that's why people go to like the Jaguars, who might
Florida.
not be the best team, but
yeah, I don't think Florida has state income taxes. I don't think Kansas does either. They have a low income tax, I think.
Something like that. I mean, that's why they live in Mission Hills, Kansas.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, I think it was a Kansas governor after Alex Gordon re-signed with the Royals. He had some stupid tweet about how it was actually smart, but I think Gordon actually lives on the Missouri side. But that's not the point. But yeah, they're in Vegas now. The Las Vegas Raiders. I guess if you're going to put a team in Las Vegas,
it kind of has to be the Raiders.
Kind of has to be the Raiders. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good fit. I know there are a lot of people out there that are going to complain about that Vegas doesn't need an NFL team for whatever reason. I don't know why I don't know. Those people are going to say, oh, well, Vegas is associated with gambling. Okay, let's just accept it. I mean, come on. I mean, do you have any qualms or objections to a NFL team in Vegas?
No, I have qualms with other things, but not that they're going to Vegas. I think that because the Raiders have to stay in Oakland for another 2 years and possibly a third, I think the fans should just not go to the games.
Yeah.
The Oakland fans, because you're still going to people like, okay, my team's in town, I'll go travel to Oakland. But those fans have stuck loyal to that team even when they've been garbage.
Well, and I read something earlier this afternoon that Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, who looks like Harry from Dumb and Dumber, by the way, if you ever get a chance to look him up, is offering basically a full refund to any season ticket owners that would wish to cancel their season tickets. So I guess it's a good move on their part, but I'm with you. If you're an Oakland Raider fan and you live in Oakland, it is kind of a bummer. I mean, I don't even live in Kansas City, and I couldn't imagine if the Chiefs or Royals packed up tomorrow and said, that's it, we're moving to Toronto or Charlotte or whatever. I couldn't imagine. So, yeah, I do feel bad for the Raider fans in this, even though being a Chiefs fan, I don't like the Raiders.
I don't feel sorry for the Raiders fans. I feel sorry for Oakland.
Yeah, no, I guess that's maybe what I should dilate on is I feel sorry for the Oakland fans. When you think about it, if you've grown up in Oakland your whole life, if you're a kid our age, 20, 21 years old, they moved back to Oakland in 1995. You've grown up your entire life in Oakland, which isn't necessarily a great city to begin with the Raiders being there. You could go to Raiders games and it'd be a 20-minute drive or a half-hour drive or however long it is, and you've never known of them not to be the Oakland Raiders. And then all of a sudden, they pluck them from you, and they're the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, you're from the Kansas City area. You're how far from Arrowhead Stadium in Kaufman? Half hour? 45 minutes?
45 minutes if there's traffic.
Okay. How would you feel if next year Rob Manfred came out and said, okay, we're moving the Royals to Charlotte, and Roger Goodell comes out and says, okay, the Chiefs are going to San Antonio or Toronto.
Well, okay, it'd be different if like the commissioner was like, okay, these teams have to move.
If they approved of it, though.
Okay,
I mean,
if it was like the ownership that I've trusted to run this team, that I've cared about so much, I'd probably not care about the team. There are certain circumstances that I can think of in my head with other teams like the Supersonics going to Oklahoma City. Like that's one that I think the fans can be angry about at that point. They're like, they basically stole a team. Well, stolen quotes here because it's, he owned the team and then he moved them. But it was pretty much just taking the team.
Didn't they try doing that not long ago, though, with the Kings? Wasn't it Seattle that they had a...
Yeah, something like that there was a Seattle-based something trying to buy the Kings.
And I think the founder of Starbucks was in on that, and then they ended up getting rejected, or they couldn't... I don't remember what it was, but... I mean, yeah, there are some cities that I would... I'm all for relocation because I think it's cool to see teams in different places, and... I mean, like, honestly, I don't like seeing more than one team in LA just because I don't think anywhere should have more than one team.
And, like, the Jets and Giants kind of stand out in my mind because it works.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and that might be the exception to the rule, but I think I favor your side of it when talking about, like, two teams shouldn't be in the same city. I can understand state because you could have about 3 maybe 4 teams in a state, but if you get to, like, okay, we're going to have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Wagons or something. And I don't know, but like just it's weird because it's not based on location. It's like who's good.
Well, and the Chargers and Rams are going to share a stadium starting in 2019.
Yeah, and I think that was the plan when the Rams got there anyway.
I know that because the Raiders were originally part of that deal, and then they ended up going off on their own thing to Vegas. And
yeah, because that'd be weird having the Raiders go back to LA again.
I think it would have been weirder having the Raiders and Chargers playing in the same division, sharing a stadium. That would have been just combine them as one team then. And
so yeah, I'd like for this case, I think it's good that it's still the AFC NFC team, and I just saw something on Twitter that I wanted to bring up back to the money point of the Raiders moving. For every player on the Raiders, the move will save them $130,000 to $140,000 on every million earned.
And I think Derek Carr's a free agent after this year. I believe so. This is 4th year. Yeah, so there's an option for his contract after this year. So, I mean, yeah, that guy could... Well, but he'll still have the contract in Oakland. But, yeah, I mean, so, that's a good ploy to get free agents to Las Vegas in the near future, plus the fact it's Las Vegas. And speaking of that, in Las Vegas, could you imagine if they signed Johnny Manziel to Las Vegas?
That would be awful.
Well, he's already looking at New Orleans.
Yeah, that's still not... It's better than Vegas, but that's not saying much in this situation.
Yeah, that was totally off topic. It had nothing to do with anything. But I just thought of Vegas and it being a fun time, and I think of fun time, and I thought of Johnny Manziel. So
I mean, he does like fun time.
The definition of a fun time. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting when that finally comes to fruition. I believe 2019 is the earliest that'll happen because they do have a football stadium in Las Vegas, Sam Boyd Stadium, where the University of Nevada, Las Vegas plays, but they're not real pleased with the status that it's in, so to speak, that it's kind of outdated, and they don't feel that's a plausible option. So I would say barring any crazy things happening, they'll be in Oakland for definitely at least next year, probably 2 years. Is there any chance maybe that they don't move to Las Vegas? I would say, or is it like totally a done deal now? I mean, we still got 2 years left.
I would say it's pretty much a done deal at this point.
And I think so too. And Vegas went from having no professional sports teams to having 2. Because they have the NHL team now, the Vegas Golden Knights. I believe they'll start off next season in the NHL. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for expansion. I'm all for seeing people go different places. I'd just like to see Kansas City get an NBA team or an NHL team at some point, and I'll be totally fine with all this expansion crap.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, but...
No.
So, I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on that. The Las Vegas Raiders. I'm kind of looking forward to maybe someday down the road going to a Chiefs-Raiders game in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
My liver and my wallet aren't looking forward to it, but
plus if you're sad, then that'll just like compound on each
Yeah.
other, So
like, oh man, they blew a 28-3 lead. Now I'm
In,
here
like,
in
the fourth
Vegas
quarter.
and now I'm here in Vegas and I'm sad. Man, that'd be rough. But I guess we'll see. Speaking of being sad, now transitioning over to March Madness in the UCLA tournament. And, Sean, when we looked last week, your Kansas Jayhawks looked like they were probably the team to beat. And then they're not now, obviously. Have you gotten over the sadness that hit you on Saturday night after they lost to Oregon?
kind of.
Kind of.
It's still inside.
Do you want to talk about that game, or should we just go right on to the next one?
I don't know. We'll talk about it. This game hurts. Just because yes, they're my team, but like they were playing so well that it just hurts. Like they just pick a great time to play one of the 8 worst games in Bill Self's career at Kansas.
Haven't most of those
Have-
8 worst games came in like the
3
Elite
of
Eight?
them. Three of the offensively worst games in Kansas's Bill Self history.
This one, VCU, and was it last year, Villanova?
It might have been. It's been bad. Fun fact: Kansas in the Elite Eight games under Bill Self shoot 26% from 3-pointers.
That's garbage.
Yes,
That is bad.
yes, it is.
But the Final Four, nonetheless, it is set now. Did anybody have Gonzaga, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Oregon in their Final Four? Because I sure as heck didn't.
I think it's conceivable that you had everyone there except South Carolina.
I read something that I think it was ESPN's bracket challenge. They had like 19 million brackets. 657 of them had the correct Final Four.
And that's probably like picking on some
Yeah.
random like coin flip or something. Because there's
Yeah.
no way you pick that bracket.
The only way you had that is if you absolutely could not stand Kansas and you're a South Carolina grad, and then you're like, I'm going to go 1 seeds the rest of the way. And that's kind of 657, statistically it wasn't a lot at all. It was like 0.03% or 0.031%. But from a logical, viewing for me, I was like, that's a lot more than I thought there'd be. I thought there might be 6, 7, if that. But yeah, that was it was an interesting weekend. ESPN had their main headline today, and I love this headline, was Final Four is the story of never, never, almost never, and then North Carolina. So what'd you take away from this weekend? Kansas loss aside, what'd you think? There were some really good games on.
I guess I'll touch the Kansas game again last in my list here. The South Carolina-Florida game was really exciting. I picked Florida just because I didn't think, I haven't been able to watch the South Carolina games as close as I have other games just because of, other reasons. But they play defense, and they're getting hot, and, like, not just hot, but it's outstanding, amazing, whatever about what they're doing in the second half of games.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think both games I don't know about the Baylor game. They were up pretty good at half in the Baylor game, if I remember correctly. But Duke and Florida, they were down like 7 going into the half. So
yeah, and I think it's like the first time a team has come down 3 times on their way to the Final Four. Because, normally you're not down if you're that good of a team, and you don't have to come back for 3 games,
Yeah, that's crazy. And they're kind of that feel-good story. I mean, South Carolina, we know one person in particular that, isn't too thrilled with South Carolina. I think he's just kind of being bitter about his SEC team being kind of down this year. But I've really enjoyed him. I've always thought Frank Martin's maybe one of the more underrated coaches. I mean, he left Kansas State, which was a good job at the time he had it, and went to South Carolina, which was a bad job when he took it over. And there were some reasons why he left Kansas State. There was some tension between him and the then athletic director, but he's done a really good coaching job, and he always just looks so mean.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a high school math teacher.
Yeah, he was also a bouncer at a Miami nightclub.
I knew that. Could you imagine, not doing your Algebra 1 assignment and then getting, screamed at by Frank Martin, by Mr. Martin, the high school math teacher?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
no, I don't, yeah.
I don't want that.
No, I really don't.
I mean, just seeing him yell on the screen is enough to be like, yeah, he cares and like he wants to get his point across.
I saw a video. I didn't watch the South Carolina Baylor game, but I saw highlights of it. And there was a point in the game where he was going absolutely ballistic over something. And they showed the score, and South Carolina was up by like 18. And I was like, someone needs to tell Frank Martin that they're winning by 20 with 8 minutes to go. He can calm down a little bit, but
I don't think the score dictates how he coaches. I think he's going to get after the small things and all that kind of stuff no matter what happens. I think, they could be down by 5, up by 5. He's going to coach the same way, and I think that helps teams because, you know you're going to get the same guy every day. He's not going to change the way he coaches, and if you don't like it, well, then you can transfer at that point, And so...
Yeah, I mean, he's, like I said, took Kansas State to the Elite Eight, and that's no small task. South Carolina was like an 8-win team the year before he got there. They're in the Final Four this year.
Mm.
They didn't even make it to the semifinals of the SEC tournament.
Mm.
They're in the Final Four. That is unbelievable. And hats off to him and the coaching job he's done. And, granted, their path wasn't as hard as it could have been. I mean, you could have got Villanova or Wisconsin in the Elite Eight, but you beat Duke. That's a good Duke team. I mean, that was a Vegas favorite to win it all. You knock off Duke. You beat a very talented Baylor team. And then you think Florida going into that game, Florida's probably the favorite. They're riding the emotional high of knocking off Wisconsin, and what a game that was. And they just come out a little bit flat in the second half. I don't remember what they shot from 3, but it was awful as well. And South Carolina they did what they had to do, and they're in the Final Four.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. You don't have to be the better team throughout the season. You just have to play better that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
yeah,
how it is. And they've done that for 4 games now.
You look at the West region, Gonzaga knocking off Xavier. First of all, who in the world thought Xavier was going to be in the Elite Eight? I had him losing in the first round. I think you had him losing in the second round.
Yeah, you talked about how you didn't like Florida State, which you were right. You just didn't think they'd be losing to Xavier. And then Xavier goes out and beats Arizona. Not a small task at all. And then they go up against Gonzaga, and they lose by 24.
That game kind of went how I thought it would go. Going back to the Arizona loss, though, the Arizona win, I guess, but Arizona losing. Can we go ahead and just kind of throw Sean Miller into the same boat as Scott Drew? Not quite, maybe. I mean, those guys have had so much talent, and they can't win anything. I mean, Scott Drew's been at Baylor, 12 years, 13 years?
Something around that.
How many times he got to the Final Four?
None.
Exactly. He's only got to win it once, twice? I think twice.
Yeah.
They lost to Duke once and Kentucky when both teams won all that year. Arizona every year has a top 10 pick in the draft. Every year they have one of the guys that's going to be a lottery pick. And last year they got knocked out in the first round by Wichita State. 2-3 years ago you had these really, really good teams that kind of hit the brakes going downhill. Towards the end of the season they got knocked out by Wisconsin. All the talent that Sean Miller has had, Derek Williams, Aaron Gordon, Stanley Johnson, Lauri Markkanen now, Alonzo Trier, they've had tons of talent, and they've got nothing to show for it. They can't even get past the Elite Eight.
Yeah. And, it kind of shows that it's not that easy to win. Like, you can't just have the best players and win. It speaks to, some guys, even though they may be a top 100 player, they're, take a guy just off the top of my head, Frank Mason was a top 100 guy, but he wasn't, he's not looking to be the top player in the country coming in for his freshman year because he came in the same class with Andrew Wiggins plus Joel Embiid. You're not going to be able to outplay or or outshine those guys. But guys that can kind of spend their 3 to 4 years in the, in the system, it kind of shows that like those are the guys that can make your team go to the next level. That's why kind of Coach Calipari's kind of hit this point where he has to kind of find a new way to do it, because one and dones just aren't getting it done at this point.
No, they're good enough to get you to the Elite Eight, your Sweet 16, but really outside of that, the one year they did win all, they had a freak athlete in Anthony Davis. I mean, Anthony Davis is like he's one in a kind. I mean, you don't even Lonzo Ball or Josh Jackson, as good as they are, it's not the same as Anthony Davis. Obviously, they play different positions for one, but it's just not the same. So, yeah, it's just different. You see a lot of veteran-heavy teams. You look at Gonzaga, even though there's some guys on that team that maybe haven't played at Gonzaga their whole career, like Nigel Williams-Goss. I'm drawing a blank on where he transferred from, but they have a Missouri transfer on there. Is it Williams? I don't know who it is. Przemek Karnowski. I thought that guy graduated like 3 years ago. And judging by the look over here, Sean's trying to grow the Przemek Karnowski beard too going along. Is that what you're working on?
Kind of. I mean, not from him, but you talk about Williams-Goss. He transferred.
I know he transferred with a Cal.
No, from Washington.
Washington. I knew it was a West Coast school. And is it Jonathan Williams, or I can't think of his name? He was the all-tournament captain, the regional captain. I thought he was a Missouri. I know they have a Missouri transfer on their roster. If Devin Albertson was here, he'd be able to help me out. But I'm almost certain they have a Missouri transfer on their roster. And
right now I'm pulling up the roster.
I'm drawing a blank on who it is.
So we have Jordan Matthews, Jonathan Williams.
Might have been Jordan Matthews. I honestly don't remember. But it's a very talented team. Mark Fuson, a really, really talented coach. And, you could make the argument that if one of these big jobs opened up, like a UCLA or an Oregon or something, that maybe that'd be intriguing to Mark Few. But at the same time, he's built up a program that is almost equal to what they're doing elsewhere.
Yeah, their big stepping stone has been finally getting into the Final Four, because they,
so it's his 18th season.
Yeah, it's his 18th season. They had never gotten past the Elite Eight. Now that they finally gotten past it, as you talked about earlier, they are now the Vegas favorite to win this. They're the Vegas favorite to win the tournament. And side note, the two previous Vegas favorites going into the weekends have lost, being Duke and Kansas. That doesn't have anything to do with anything.
So South Carolina is going to win this weekend, is what you're telling me. And I just looked up, Jonathan Williams was the transfer from Mizzou. So, yeah, that's kind of bittersweet for Mizzou. And speaking of that, there are two former Kansas State coaches in the Final Four this week. Do you think, they're kicking themselves in Manhattan?
Yes.
I mean,
without a doubt, they haven't quite been a great program, but they've had times where they've been good. And seeing Frank Martin be able to do this basically because their AD didn't agree with Frank Martin is stupid.
And, yeah, I think it's totally stupid. But, Frank Martin, Dan Altman, they're at South Carolina and Oregon, respectively. They're both in the Final Four. These guys when they left Kansas State, they weren't leaving for, top-notch jobs. I mean, when Bob Huggins left for West Virginia, Huggy had played at West Virginia. That was kind of a given that if that job ever opened up, he might want it. It's not like they were leaving for UCLA or Michigan State or Michigan even. I mean, they left for Creighton and South Carolina, which Creighton was a solid mid-major, but even at the time when Altman took that job, they were a Mo Valley school.
Mm-hmm.
And South Carolina was not a good job when Frank Martin took it. I think Frank Martin would have taken a job anywhere to get out of Kansas State. And I think he's shown it now. He's, I wouldn't be, I thought if a job like UCLA opened up from Alford leaving, there were two guys, if I was UCLA, that I would have called right away. I would have called Mark Few and I would have called Frank Martin. I don't think you throw it now because I doubt Alford leaves with the Indiana job being filled. But, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting, I guess, that K-State has 2 coaches in the Final Four, and K-State's never been in the Final Four in our lifetime. So,
not in my lifetime.
yeah, so we'll go to the other side of that bracket, Sean. You have Oregon and North Carolina being the other 2 Final Four teams, and that Oregon team, you witnessed that one, I'm sure, in tears while watching the game. That's a better team than I think a lot of people gave them credit for. I had them losing in the second round to Rhode Island.
They were close to losing to Rhode Island too.
Yeah, they probably should have.
Well, should have. If if you can close out a game, you win. But go into the Kansas game. We talked about earlier where this ranks in like disappointing losses in my life, and this is number 1, if not tied with last year. But this year as a unique, special place, if I can say, because Frank Mason's the best Kansas player that I have seen play during my life. And he might not be the most talented because most of the one-and-done guys that have come in probably a better talent. But I don't think anybody has the heart or the ability to do what he does.
Frank Mason is probably, one of the all-time Kansas greats. I mean, I think you probably go Danny Manning, and then I don't know from there. I mean, I'm not a Kansas fan.
Danny Manning, Will Chamberlain.
Paul Pierce up there maybe?
Paul Pierce, name. Clyde Lovellette.
I wouldn't have known who that was.
But
Mario Chalmers has got to be up there somewhere too, just because he bailed you guys out.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's because of the shot. But, like, Frank's done this for 4 years. He tried to put the team on his back, and they just couldn't hit a shot. It's not amazing, because it's not, but it's weird that Bill Self's 2-7 in the Elite Eight.
That's.
I mean, as
Bill Self equals Scott Drew.
Sure. I mean, it's really weird to think about because he has all this talent, and so they have. They haven't lived up to expectations, which is really hard to think about. Because you're like, okay, well, if you're making it to, Final Four, Elite Eight, like that's good. But if you're like the Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, anything less than a national championship is just bad.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I mean, I guess it depends on circumstance too. But with what you had with this team, you had Frank Mason his senior year. You have the one-and-done stud like Josh Jackson. You have core pieces around them like Landon Lucas and LeGerald Vick, and not getting it done. It is disappointment. I mean, last year was disappointment for him too. I think with Perry Ellis being his 7th senior year or whatever it was.
Something like that.
I was kind of shocked they didn't put him in the game the other night. But
yeah, he probably could have helped the inside presence, and that's one thing that Kansas they had to go away from because they didn't really have that inside presence to rely on like they've had every year that Bill Self's been there because Landon Lucas isn't the inside presence. He can get some shots up, but he's not really good offensively. One guy they're going to get back is Udoka Azubuike. He went out in like December or early January around there with a torn ligament in his wrist. So he'll be back, I think, late May, early June. And I mean, he was the guy who was in the starting 5 for Kansas.
Can we just agree that, towards about 6-7 minutes ago when it was close, but Kansas just couldn't quite get that run, and I don't remember, it was a 9-10 point game most of that time, that Oregon's offensive possessions were garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, they were running like the Andy Reid offense of we'll just control the clock, slow the game down. I think they had a 5-second call, if I remember correctly, and
yeah,
they were trying to throw that game away, and Kansas just couldn't.
Those are the times where you need to play to win, not
play to not lose.
Yeah, because that's why Kansas was able to get back in it. If Oregon was just able to run the way that they had been doing it for the game, then that's probably a 20-point game. Because Oregon just couldn't. Okay, they could miss, but they were making shots that it's the type of game where like, okay, like the other team's going to have to start making shots if you have a chance. And at this point, Kansas shot 20% from 3, and they just couldn't find a way to put it in the bucket.
When you look at this weekend, what was the best game of the weekend? I know it wasn't the Kansas game for you.
No, it was, two of them were blowout-ish, which would be the Oregon-Kansas game, and then the Gonzaga-Xavier game, which was a blowout.
You think those are the best games of the weekend?
No. I'm just like listing off my games. I mean, there's, to me, one obvious choice, and it's going to be North Carolina, Kentucky.
See, I was going to go the flip side of that. I was going to go Wisconsin, Florida. Because it was
okay. So
the whole weekend. I'm talking from
like
Sweet
Thursday?
16 on.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd say it's those two. I think Xavier Arizona was really good.
It was. I mean, the Florida Wisconsin game and the Kentucky North Carolina games had the buzzer beater aspect. It didn't quite. Well, one did. One was close enough that it was.
Well, see, in that game, Wisconsin was down like 8 with like 7 to go, and they rallied back. That 3 that Zach Showalter threw up was incredible. That he, was able to maintain his balance, stay behind the 3-point line, get the shot off, and make it. It kind of reminded me of the shot that Marcus Page hit last year in the national championship game to tie it. They go to overtime, and they were in control for basically that whole overtime. They just couldn't hit the free throws that they needed. They go up 2, and I remember when they were up 1, I think it was Doug Gottlieb had on Twitter that they should miss the next one on purpose. There were 4 seconds left. I myself am thinking, why would you do that? You're giving them... But I don't think Florida had any timeouts, was the one kicker. Looking back on it, having what happened, they make it, they inbound, Chris Chioza drives down the court, drains the 3. Maybe that wouldn't have been a bad idea to... But then you're only making it a 1-point game. That's the tricky spot, is then if they drive in and draw a foul, or if they pull up a 3 and you foul, they only got to make 2 and the ball game's over. So, yeah, that's a really big dilemma there for...
Yeah, that's a thing that's kind of been a big deal in the past 5 years, I would say. Coaches have had to decide whether they want to foul when you're up by 2, because, if they make a 3 or even if they take the shot and then you accidentally foul, and they get 3 shots, would you rather risk going to overtime or try and give up that 3-point shot? And
yeah,
I don't think anybody has the right answer for that. I think, it comes down to what's happening in the game, who's on the court, because, every game is that different, and there's no good way to be like, this is how you have to do it.
Well, the one that I always think of when I hear people say, just miss the next one on purpose, I think back to the Duke Butler game from 6 or 7 years ago where Brian Zubak misses a free throw and then Gordon Hayward runs down the court. Might have got a moving screen, but throws up a half-courter that almost went in. If he makes that half-court 3-point shot and Butler wins the national championship, then yes, everyone's talking about what a great shot that is, but at the same time, they're talking about how Coach K and Duke make the decision to intentionally miss that free throw because Butler was out of timeouts, about 3 seconds left. How they decide to intentionally miss that free throw and give them the ball right there and make it a 2-point game and leave basically a point out there on the court. So, like you said, there is no right answer for it, but exciting games this weekend. How about that North Carolina-Kentucky game? Wasn't that a lot of fun? I was pulling for Kentucky. Being a Duke fan, I never root for North Carolina, even when I pick them. But
yeah, that's why I picked them as my best game of the weekend.
0 teams in the Final Four this year.
I had
0.
I had 1, which was North Carolina. Yeah.
Most years I get 1. This year I had 0. Last year I went into the Elite 8 with 3 of my 4 still alive, and I got 1.
Yeah, that's not bad. I think I went in with...
Or did I get 2? I got 2. I had North Carolina and Oklahoma.
So I think I had... Going into the Elite 8, I had 2 of the 8, but only one of them survived.
I think I had Kentucky and North Carolina, and then that might have been it. I had Kansas, but they didn't make it to the Final Four. But, yeah, that North Carolina-Kentucky game, a lot of fun. It never really had a complete rhythm to it, kind of sloppy. Very aggressive. There were a lot of whistles early on in the game and throughout the game. Both teams found themselves in a little bit of foul trouble. But, De'Aaron Fox hits that 3-pointer to tie it, and I'm thinking, wow, they're going into overtime. All the momentum's on Kentucky's side. Then North Carolina right down the court. Luke May, who averaged like 5 points a game during the regular season, wasn't a huge factor. Went off for I don't remember what he had yesterday, 17, and he had 20 in their Elite 8 or Sweet 16 against Butler. So he played really well, and the Tar Heels on to the Final Four now, and I know Vegas has Gonzaga as the favorite, but it just seems like maybe this is, the way the Tar Heels are going to do it. I hate to say it, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about how the odds are figured out to that because, I mean, I wouldn't put Gonzaga as my favorite, but, I think that they have the second best odds. If I were to do it, I'd probably put North Carolina at the highest.
I'd go North Carolina, Gonzaga, Oregon, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you probably think the same way. So, I don't know. There's, this weekend it'll be South Carolina, Gonzaga, North Carolina, Oregon. I don't know the times on those. I would guess that the South Carolina Gonzaga game is probably the early game.
Probably.
Because they normally like to put the better game in that prime time slot. Even though last year, Villanova, Oklahoma ended up not being a game. But those are going to be fun ones to watch in Phoenix, Arizona. Or Glendale, I guess, technically. The University of Phoenix Stadium. So, yeah, that's fun. I don't remember. Do you know the times for those? Like 5:09?
Yes, it's 5:09 and 7:49 Central Time. Both games will be on CBS. So
which one's 5 o'clock games, to say?
The South Carolina Gonzaga.
That's kind of what I figured. So, Sean, looking ahead, we come back in here next Monday. We're going to sit down. We're going to preview the national championship game. We're going to preview Major League Baseball. Who do you think, when we sit down next Monday, we will be talking about in the national championship game?
I think it's going to be Gonzaga, North Carolina, which means it's going to be South Carolina, Oregon, obviously. I think Gonzaga has had the easiest path to get here so far, and so I think we've only seen them play up to their potential one game, and that's been against Xavier. South Carolina's had to come back in almost every game they've played, so they have to, maybe they don't quite need that to get into games. It's kind of weird. Like, okay, well, now you're down by 7. Go actually play the game. But I think, they're going to get down early, and I think Gonzaga is going to win, but it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if South Carolina goes out and wins.
I wouldn't be real surprised either way that these come out. I'm with you. I think probably North Carolina, Gonzaga will be our title game. Oregon, though, they're playing like a team that maybe is just a team of destiny. I mean, they've had some close ones. They beat Michigan by 2 points, 3 points. They barely get by Rhode Island. They're trailing that one in the final minutes. They come back and win. But Jordan Bell, that kid's, he's a manster right now. Dorsey's averaging like 23 points a game in the tournament. Dylan Brooks, the best player in the Pac-12, aside from Lonzo Ball. So, yeah, they look like maybe they're a team of destiny. But North Carolina, just like South Carolina, North Carolina's had to overcome some deficits. The last 2 games, or 2 of their last 3 games, they've been down 5 in the closing minutes. Had to go on like a 12-0 run to get back in it. So, I don't know. I'm rooting, me personally, I would watch the national championship game if it was, Belmont and IPFW. I wouldn't really care. I would watch the national championship game. I kind of want to see Oregon, South Carolina, because how random would that be? I know ratings would be crappy.
Ratings would be awful. As like any team, like if Oregon wins, ratings are going to be worse, just because North Carolina brings that brand, so they'll bring in the casual fans. If it's North Carolina, South Carolina, there's only 2 states that's going to care about that. If it's Washington, Oregon, 2 states are going to care about that at this point. And so, I think it'll be...
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun. I'm sad that my team's not here. I know Trevor's also sad that Duke's not in. It's...
I took some solace, though, when they lost to South Carolina. I was like, they lost to freaking South Carolina. Really? I do take some solace in the fact that South Carolina's in the Final Four now.
Yeah.
So at least I can say, yeah, we lost South Carolina, but they made the Final Four. We just couldn't stop out. So
honestly, at this point, like, my team is just as good as Iowa at this point because season's over. It doesn't mean much at this point.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that Kansas did in my mind this year was won the Big 12. Yeah. Everything else, like,
nothing else matters.
It's a very pessimistic way to think about it, but I mean, if you don't win at all, then it's a bad season.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Sean, I think that pretty much wraps it up for episode number 5 of the Trevor and Sean Sports Podcast. We'll be back here next week to look ahead to the national championship game. They'll be on later that night and preview the Major League Baseball season. One last thing, Sean. NASCAR race in California yesterday. Can you tell me who won?
No, I was watching college basketball.
I didn't watch either, but it was
Oh, dang
Kyle
it.
Larson taking the checkered flag. So he gets pulled the sweep on the Xfinity Series race and the Monster Energy Series race. That's kind of weird still saying, but Kyle Larson punched his ticket into the chase. So right now in the chase, you have Kurt Busch, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex, Ryan Newman, and Kyle Larson. Parody. It's awesome. And this podcast was awesome. So, Sean, what do you say? Be back here next week, preview the Oregon-South Carolina National Championship game?
I mean, that'll be a defensive matchup.
If it happens,
at
yeah.
that point. But I guess, defense wins championships like we saw with the
Yeah.
Bearcats. So we'll see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. So thank you for listening. We'll be back here next Monday. For Sean Nino, I'm Trevor Mater. Thank you.